I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Raven Keefer. We are still on our road trip, so my audio won't be top-notch today. We will be back in the studio tomorrow. Be sure and check out my films. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. We are booking guests for June. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Raven Keefer. He is a researcher, an expose writer from mid-1980s through today. He currently has over 23 books in print. He has been a lifetime researcher that contributes to numerous content creators and independent reporters. Raven, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. As I was telling you earlier, my wife and I decided to take a little trip to Glenwood Hot Springs for our vacation. We had a great time, and I woke up this morning to a very interesting story on my news feed. Just to give everyone a little idea, the headline from the U.S. Herald, multiple pastors claim that U.S. military intelligence officers secretly briefed them to prepare their congregations for disclosure. There are tons of articles about this right now. There has been no official statement from the White House or anything like that, but it is very interesting. Are we about to get hit with the real information, or are we about to be pulled deeper into the Psyop? So much to get into. Before we do, Raven, remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find more.
Oh, folks, if you want to find me, it's just Raven Keefer. You can either put in Raven Keefer Music or Raven Keefer Podcasts, and you'll find me on just about every repeater platform. I did promise folks that I'd have a new album out by the end of April. I had some really bad things that happened, and I wasn't able to get it done, but I'm hoping to have it out by Father's Day. So next album will be out mid-June. Other than that, my podcasts are still going, and I'm still doing live updates on the Middle East situation in the Ukraine when there's something to actually put out. So you can catch that too. But for like the last week, it has just been propaganda rhetoric and the lie pies. Dude, I feel like I'm having deja vu. But anyway, so I'm not going to repeat that stuff unless I have something that I can really, provide. I'm not doing updates on the Middle East. It should probably get one done by the end of this week. There'll be enough new information, but the stuff that's coming out right now between the shite stream media and the alternative media is just kind of like guesswork. And I'm not into doing that. I would rather give you real information than waste your time.
Well, it may not be much different with what we're going to be discussing. The propaganda, the misinformation hasn't gone anywhere. We're still under the thumb of the same rulership, so we must express the same caution with all of this stuff. But I'll go ahead and read an article to kick this off, just to give everyone in the audience an idea of what some of these news articles are about. Just do a Google search. You'll find tons of articles about American pastors briefed by government.
I should point out before you read this thing, folks, this is not unprecedented. During the Bush administration, they used to have weekly meetings with the evangelical and the Protestant pastors. What they call that? The National Council of Churches. There you go. And they would get their marching orders on the Iraq and Middle East situation. So it's not, when they get their 503C, that binds them under certain restrictions. People don't realize this. There's things they can and can't say. So, yeah, George.
I do find it interesting that pastors are the first to be briefed in the situation. This is a real situation happening.
But yeah, no, back then it was a way to keep support, for the Iraq and the Middle East situation for Bush. So Anyway, folks are gonna this article is pretty cool.
This is a different one than I was telling you about earlier. This is from First Post. Like I said, they have plenty that you can go find, but a group of popular American pastors have warned that President Donald Trump's release of alien files could shatter Christian beliefs. And this one's according to the Daily Mail. They've claimed that U.S. intelligence officials have held a series of meetings with pastors and told them to prepare churches to hold the Christian community together in the wake of the Revelations shockwaves. Popular evangelist Pastor Perry Stone said that the alien files could include reports and possibly videos of aliens and extraterrestrial craft. He says you're going to have people who are going to say if there are galaxies and allegedly other creations in the universe, then the whole creation story is a myth. He's saying some people may automatically say this once they hear the information. You also have people that he claims turn from the Christian faith completely because they have no answer for what they're about to hear. There's varying thoughts about the information that is coming out. We heard J.D. Vance saying that he believes that they are demons. So there may be a conflict of interest with this disclosure movement that's happening right now.
You know, it, for me, it seems like another one of those to the stars things. I hate to be that, but I mean, you know, when To the Stars came out, you know, what was that guy's name? I lie also. Yeah, Lou I lie also. That's what I call him, Lou I lie also. But anyway, you know, the problem that we have, I saw some of this being posted. I don't think it was yesterday. I think it was a couple days ago. I saw some of this stuff being posted by some alternative media people. And what I said is, if you want disclosure, the Upanishads and the Rig Vedas have plenty. And then these are the Sumerian tablets. We don't have to wait for the government to give us an approved version of people flying around. You know, the Vimanas went from everything like a land cruiser that you see in Star Wars up to a full-size city. To me, it's like, okay, you're going to tell me that these things exist when I have known ever since I found the Rig Vedas. Okay. Well, you know, I don't mean to be so, I don't mean to discount it in the way that it's not irrelevant, because, you know, the fact of the matter is there's so many people whose faith is so weak, because they've established it upon these beliefs that have been sold to them for how many centuries now. And they rely upon this very narrow, focused narrative in order to have their religious beliefs.
Well, apparently, part of the information that was briefed to these pastors is that these beings are interdimensional. They're reinforcing that fact that they're not coming from different planets. It brings massive implications to theological narratives surrounding this. I'll never back at my childhood whenever I was in Catholic school, and I think I told you this before. I know I told my audience this before. They showed us these videos of what the apocalypse would look like, how it might unfold. And it included a alien deception that the entire world would be deceived by our government telling us that aliens are real, and we would start to see UFOs and the narrative would expand. And this was a very low budget video that we were shown growing up in elementary and junior high school at a Christian school. At the time, I thought it was hilarious, but looking back, it makes you wonder. It brings up a lot of questions.
Well, and you know, we've had the Project Bluebeam information out there for a couple decades now. There's a lot of more things that they can do that people just don't realize. You know, I did a whole podcast talking about the dirigibles that were being built in the 2000s. These things are the size of, you know, football stadiums. They have skins on them that they kind of work like the James Bond car. They use cameras to project what's above them, below them, so that they blend into the sky. Problem is they actually create shadows. So if they're in the clouds, you can see their shadows, or if you're on the ground, you can see their shadows. So I mean, they built, I don't know how many of them they built at one time. You know, there was an estimate that just that one company had built 90 of these things. Long duration flights too. That's the other thing about them. So it wouldn't, you know, one of the payloads that was supposedly able to be carried on that was Project Bluebeam, for military purposes. You know, and I covered that, good Lord, probably like 2021 in one of my podcasts. But so I mean, they do have the technology to do the Project Bluebeam. But I imagine, you and I have talked about this before, they probably have aircraft that they could fool people with. I mean, the F-45 Phantoms, those are UAVs. Man, they look like spaceships coming at you. So, yep. Max Egan, you know, God love the man. He did a show years ago saying, you know, talking about using a combination of holographic trickery and real vehicles in order to create the impression that things were happening. And then, do you remember they were going to use a holographic statue of Christ talking to the people in Cuba to try to overthrow Cuba? I mean, so, you know, it's not like they haven't talked about this stuff. Interdimensional, I agree with that 100%. You know, when you go back and you listen to the stories from the Rig Veda, and the Upanishads, it says that they removed themselves from the sight of man. Doesn't say that they went anywhere. It says they removed themselves from the sight of man. Well, how would you do that? You know, in the old stories, they would appear above a valley, there would be a war, and then they would disappear. Interdimensional, or just outside of our visual range. You and I have talked about this many times with other entities. I don't see that there would be a problem with me telling you that, yeah, there are interdimensional things all over the place. You know, if you go to the Norse stories, they talk about the Rainbow Bridge. They say that the Norse gods went across the Rainbow Bridge and were not visible to humanity here. Well, what's a rainbow? It's spectrum of light. And I've talked about this many times, but you know, trying to reemphasize the fact that extraterrestrial doesn't mean outer space, doesn't mean from another planet. It means from a different land.
It makes me wonder how far they will go if indeed there's any level of deception included in this. Many have pointed out the possibility that this narrative has been in the works for a very long time, and they may have not only exotic technology, where they got it is a different story, but they may have also been developing these biological entities. Some claim that in deep underground bases, it's not aliens that they have in captivity. It is something that our government created that will be used as an alien for the deception factor.
Yeah, I mean, there. I think about, you know, like Mengele. You know, I think about Joseph Mengele and all those people that came over here to the United States after World War II that were doing all kinds of horrific experiments on people. Then you look at who's actually, you know, you look at the Epstein class that's in charge, and their sadism, their I don't know what word to use. There ain't a word that's evil enough to use to describe what they do. Why wouldn't they alter people to try to pass it off? You know, they're going to have to do, you got to figure they're outed. They know they're outed and they don't seem to care. So they would have to do something big enough. Could we get Independence Day over Washington? Would that be possible?
It also brings the question, why now? Is there something inevitable that we're going to experience that they're trying to get ahead of with this information? Why now are they deciding to release this? And it's also very interesting that we have these 11 or 12 or how many missing scientists that have died or just disappeared right before this disclosure gets ramped up.
Yeah, well, the one goes back to 2018, so that's 8 years. But I mean, it's 13 of them now, and that's just ours. That's just ours. We've had reports that the same things happened in China. But you can go. Folks get mad at me for bringing it up, but if you can go to missing 411, and there have been scientists disappearing since the 60s. Uh, so I don't know. I don't know how that fits in. One thing that I can tell you is that everybody talks about these scientists disappearing, being involved in propulsion systems. That's true. But a lot of them also were involved in nuclear issues. So either side of that, with this revelation that they're supposed to be bringing out, seems kind of odd to me. Did you catch a couple months back, they were talking about, there was an article that came out and it was really brief, but it said that the United States was trying to get ahead of the extraterrestrials revealing themselves.
What was that? You broke up there for a second.
I'm sorry. There was an article that came out just a little while back that said that the United States and other nations were trying to get ahead of extraterrestrials revealing themselves.
Right.
And it was just a really brief, I mean, it was only out for a couple of days and then it vanished. It seems to me like they're sowing seeds. There have been layers. I mean, I hate to bring up Men in Black, but I'm old enough to remember the tabloids at the counter when you were checking out of the grocery store in the 70s and 80s. And they've been sowing this thing like a really good crop for like 50 years now, man. But I'll tell you something else I noticed the other day too, and I got to give credit to Melissa over at Tree String Media. She went back and she looked, and being hit by an asteroid or visited UFO disclosure, those two things. The Earth is going to get hit by an asteroid, or we're going to see UFOs disclose themselves. This thing has been a cycle all the way back into the 60s. So, you have to ask yourself why those two specific things keep being regurgitated. Sometimes at my age, man, being my age, I feel like every 5 or 6 years, we're back to the same story again. Maybe 8 or 10, but still, it's like they keep. It's like going. You talk about real deja vu. It's like every 10 years they start the whole cycle over again.
But you also have to wonder about the 11, 12, 13 or more missing scientists are doing this to control narratives. Maybe there are free energy implications involved, and they don't want that getting out of control or getting too far ahead of them. So that way, take care of some of the scientists that are working with it.
The one girl that disappeared, I'm sorry, she ended up dead, but that one girl was online talking about gravitics, anti-gravitics, and she was talking about not only was it a way to travel, but it was a way to generate electricity. And she specifically said, if I end up dead, I'm not suicidal. And of course, she ended up dead. It kind of reminds me, think about some of the guys who died right before COVID started. We had all those people who were virologists that died in a plane crash. They were going to a meeting in Africa. There's like 87 or so that died on that one aircraft. And then the guy who created the PCR test died right beforehand. It kind of has echoes, doesn't it?
It sure does. I have to wonder if there is a split within our government regarding the nature of these beings. If there are some members of our government and politics that believe they're aliens, and then the other section believe that it's demons, how that would play out, how the religious communities are going to respond to this. Because
Yeah.
looking at the level of deception we've always been exposed to, I don't believe that we can trust the explanations or the narratives that the government is going to tell us.
And Chris, you can't trust the religious perspective either because they've never told the truth. Project Veritas, and I have my qualms, but Project Veritas just released a very interesting, decently budgeted documentary, and they, equated everything to being demonic, whether it be alien, or fairies. Um, they said it's
It's easier to control the masses if you have two narratives to choose from. It's either aliens or demons. There's no middle ground. There's nothing in between that. It's easier to control the masses if they are stuck in those polarized extremes, because if there's a spectrum of what people consider good and evil and everything between that, it makes it much more difficult to control the narrative and control the response that comes along with it.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to do 3 interviews with Glenn Steckling. Great man, somebody who I consider a dear friend. And folks, I got to tell you, he passed away earlier this year. To me, he's as much a loss to me as Jordan Maxwell. But I was fortunate enough to do 3 interviews with him about George Adamski.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting that of all the people that have done UFO research and UFO exposition, why did they choose George Adamski to bury? I mean, not bury. I'm talking about like dig a mine 2 or 3 miles down and bury everything. I always found that to be one of the oddest. As they're doing all this stuff, why is that one narrative that's different than the others the one that they chose to bury? Hell, and folks, if you want to hear the interviews that I did with Glenn about George Adamski, they're available on YouTube, and they're also available on my Spreaker channel. But what George Adamski had to say about those that he met is completely different than the narrative that they've been trying to sell us since the 1950s and 60s. I mean, you got to think about it. They really started trying to sell us this narrative during the sci-fi movie boom in the 50s.
Even with people who are experiencers and abductees, amongst them, there's such a wide variety of experiences, it's extremely difficult to understand. But that either means that these experiences are controlled by clandestine groups or our government, or there is a spectrum of beings that people are having experiences with. And I really doubt that our government has complete control over paranormal phenomena.
Well, and my thing would be is based on all, and folks, if you haven't heard some of the interviews that Chris has done, you should. But um, my thing is there is such a wide variety, and it's not just in the experience; it's how the experience occurs. It would be different if everybody was isolated out in the middle of nowhere and there was nobody around and everybody had the same experience. But some people are like right on the edge of a city when it happens. Some people are out on the highway. Some people are out camping. Some people are so remote that heck, I don't even know how they got there. Then you got some people that are like with a whole group of people and they're the only ones that it happens to. You have people that have it happen to them in the middle of a large city in their own house. So it's dynamically different, and the experiences that they have are different. Now, is that based on their understanding of what's going on, or is it actually variations of these entities doing their thing? Um, you've talked a lot more experiences than I have, but it doesn't seem to me like it's based on their, because some of them didn't believe anything when it happened to them.
There's a level of deception, there's a level of fakery to some people's experiences. You hear about the MyLab and MK Ultra experiences all the time where people will be taken by a non-human being, but there's also a military guy there doing experiments on them. So I think that does occur, but there's also a real phenomena.
Something important to point out to folks. After some real investigators got involved with the face stealers down there in South America,
Yeah.
they discovered that the faces were blown off with a shotgun.
Ah, yes. Another thing about that case is witnesses said that they heard them speaking to each other in either Portuguese or English.
Yes, but the actual investigators got involved and figured out through examination that, yeah, their face was gone, but it's because they caught a shotgun blast. So we know that that is a human issue. Now, the little sphere that they have, I'm really curious about that thing. Um, what do they call it? The Bogan sphere or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
The one that was floating around and the guy, it landed on the ground, and now they're examining that one. I'm curious about. But because now they have two of them, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about that because it doesn't look like anything that we could do. It doesn't have any visible projection or projection. It doesn't have any visual propulsion system. So, and the markings on them are just they look like they go back to like Sumerian. Actually, some of the markings that I saw, they look the Torah cave in South America that Father, whatever his name was, got the gold out of. Some of the markings on those spheres look like the same markings that were on those gold discs. So I would be curious.
There have been some very high impact events relating to extraterrestrials in the past few years. We covered the Miami Mall alien fiasco recently, but after we did that, they had more information come out. They had a couple of witnesses and a police officer that was supposedly involved with the response that claimed that he was told he could not talk about anything that he witnessed. There may be something unusual or paranormal about what occurred that day. What do you think?
You know, when you get, what, 500 people and 120 cops involved, um, i- i- at that point in time, anything that you get is going to be clouded. Yeah, there's an old experiment they did. They had a guy run into a theater. It was a psych class, and they videotaped it. They had a guy run into the theater, scream and yell. He had a gun. He took off with somebody's purse and ran out the door. And out of the 50 people that were in the building, they got 50 different descriptions. So I need to point that out to folks.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not taking away from the fact that something might have happened, but by the time you get that many people and that many descriptions, and they're trying to release all the information at once, my point would be that they're trying to release all the information at once in order to cloud what actually happened.
You mentioned the ancient Vimanas, the ancient texts that mentioned these beings that these current stories could be referring to. Possibly we should start looking towards more of those ancient texts for answers about the nature of these beings rather than just take the word of our government. It does seem that our ancients had a better understanding of the realms beyond our perception. it may be a good idea to take a look at what they told us about those beings.
Well, the Vimanas, there were variations. They had the ones that they described as flying carpets. They had descriptions that kind of reminded me of the land speeders that you see in Star Wars. Then they had the ones that were the size of battleships. Then they had the ones that were the size of cities. The whole city appeared, and folks, I'm not quoting it exactly, but the whole city appeared. It rained fire and lightning down on the valley, destroying everything, and then vanished before their eyes. I'm pretty sure they understood what appear and disappear meant. 1 minute you couldn't see it, the next minute it was destroying everything. And then when it was done, it just vanished. It didn't fly away. It just vanished. And then, they've discovered radioactive fallout where they said that, I can't remember which god it was, rained a arrow of fire that melted the people. They've discovered that in India. They've discovered Rama's Bridge between India and don't get mad at me, y'all. I can't remember the little island down there. Sri Lanka. They said, well, it'd be impossible for them to build a bridge from India to Sri Lanka. Well, you can see it on satellite now, y'all. They hit it when they were trying to dredge a path for ships. And they're still fighting that in India. They're trying to keep them from. They hit it with the dredger and discovered that it was finished rock. And so the people, you can't destroy Rama's Bridge. And I guess it's still in court. They don't want it destroyed because it's an ancient relic of their people. But they still want that. They still want that passage there for ships. So I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do it. My guess is they'll destroy Rama's Bridge before they'll interfere with her shipping. But
something else I'd be interested to witness how they roll out is the truth about how long they've known about these beings, how much of a relationship our military or three-letter agencies or clandestine groups have had relationships with these beings. If you go off of the information that has come from experiencers and whistleblowers, we've been involved with these things since at least the time of World War II, when our technology really started developing with Eisenhower. But according to others, we've been in touch for a much longer time. So I'd be very interested to see how they disclose that part of the information, how long they've been aware of it.
yeah, well, I mean, it's like the airships. The group out of Germany that had been flying airships all the way back in the 1600s. If that group had continued along the course that they were following, they were already flying airships themselves in the 1600s. Those stories that came out in the 17 and 1800s about people landing in a lit ship and asking for water. And then trading them basically hardtack for the water. It makes sense just from a basic human development. And of course that group ended up in California in the 17 and 1800s. And there's a lot of those stories. I don't know if you've come across them, but there's a lot of those stories about people flying in a lit ship and an anchor dragging the ground, and they come down and they need water. And they speak English with a funny accent. One guy said they sounded like Germans. So we know that was going on in the 1800s, that there were airships flying around in the 1800s. One story came from a mayor of a city, and he said, oh, they told me I really shouldn't talk about it because it was experimental for the military. We've had this stuff going on for a long time. Now, as far as involvement, I mean, did you see the article that came out a few years ago where they claimed that Putin had met with aliens? Yeah, they claimed that Putin and his military had met with aliens in not too long after he took over for president. So he's been in office for like 18 or so years now, but I think it was like in 2010 is when 2010, 2012, somewhere around there, they were saying that he met with aliens. I go back to what you and I have always said. There are things right beside us right now that we can't see. Our visual spectrum, our ability to hear, is so limited. I mean, I could literally have 10 people sitting right here in the room with me right now and not be able to see them if they were just a little bit out of phase to what I can actually see and hear.
Another aspect that is going to be interesting to see unfold is the technology. Are we going to see or even have access to some of the things that have been touted for a while by whistleblowers and contactees, med beds, free energy, all of these fantastic things that are supposed to coincide with disclosure? Somehow, I really doubt we'll see that.
I'll tell you something that is a reality that I think it might be pushing this narrative. We know that we have an electromagnetic reversal going on right now, a polar reversal. We got the magnetic north and magnetic south racing across the planet, and it's changing the magnetic fields here, right? Well, if the magnetic fields change, we also have the galactic current sheet that is obviously come into the solar system. If these things change, would it not make it possible for us to see things that we couldn't see before? You know, it says when even in the Bible, it says when it happens, things will appear that will scare humans to death because they've never seen them before.
Right.
It's the same thing in the Quran. Things will appear beside you that were not there. I look at science and what we know is going on with the planet itself. We know that the electromagnetic poles are moving. And could that create a disturbance where we actually start being able to see things that we couldn't see before? If they know that's coming, then they would have to disclose it, right?
It also could be that there is a major cataclysm that is approaching, and the UFO alien narrative is some kind of distraction. If they've been aware of this cataclysm for a long time, it would have given them time to develop what we know as UFOs and this technology so that they could perpetuate that psyop.
Well, I mean, I go back to how much did they know? They knew enough to build hundreds of millions of dollars worth of infrared telescope in Antarctica, and they called it Lucifer. Back in what was it, 2018, they started cutting off our access to solar observatories and other telescopes. They've been trying to hide something that's out there from people down here. At the same time, they've built other things that let them see better. Like, the Lucifer telescope that they build in Antarctica is infrared. So what would you be looking for in infrared? Infrared's something that you and I can't see with our naked eyes.
I do know that I never thought that I would see this information surface in my lifetime.
There's a lot of us that, we've been listening to, like, I know you were lucky and got to meet him, but more than I met the man once, but I've been I listened to Jordan Maxwell. I listened to David Icke. There's so many of those guys that were early on. Eric Von Donigan, we lost him, daggone it. But these were guys who were out here asking questions and pointing out the obvious, that there are big holes in these stories. And they've been doing it for a long time. So, somebody my age who came into it in the late 80s, I was even behind the time because there were people in the 60s that were asking these. Isaac Asimov was asking these questions. Even Ray Bradbury to some extent. Arthur C. Clarke. So, I mean, it's not like these questions haven't been asked. And there have been these weird distributions of revelation over time. Now, unfortunately for us, most of the revelation is similar to the Independence Day type. They're going to come and they're going to kill you all.
Right.
Be afraid, be very afraid. And I think that might be one of the reasons that George Adamski was so buried, is because his narrative was always the opposite. They're not here to kill. They're here to observe, help if they can, but not to interfere. And that's, that has never fit with the narrative that they've tried to sell us, that if they aren't like this, they're dangerous, I remember Reagan, a lot of people have heard that speech because of people like you and me, but you remember Reagan at the United Nations says, what if there was a intelligence out there that was so dangerous that it would force the world to unite in defense of itself? Now that's a very early plant of this narrative, right out there in public.
The whole problem with disclosure is there are dozens of narratives to consider. It's just not just one or two or three or four. They have dozens of possibilities surrounding this. But I do have to think about how convenient this disclosure information is for those involved with the Epstein files.
Oh, yes.
Going to be completely buried if this stuff really does start to roll out.
Well, Operation Epstein Fury hasn't kept people from digging into it. I did see that the person who's going after Melania has videos of Trump. Yeah, it came out yesterday that one of the victims has claimed to have video of Trump. So that'll be interesting. Now, until I see the video, folks, I don't believe anything. I either know or I don't. So if I don't have the video, and then, here's something else we got to be careful of, Chris. Look how easy it is to doctor videos today. I mean, that's the other problem that we have. I always point to the special effects that they did with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, because you had people in two completely different stages, two completely different sized stages. And in the film, they are talking to each other, interacting, passing things back and forth, and they're not even in the same space. Think about how easy it would be to produce a video today and put it out like it was live on the air.
Especially if it's in a remote location or a location that not that many people happen to be in. It's so easy to portray an event unfolding that isn't even real for people that would most likely never travel to that location or do their due diligence and find out what's happening there. Unfortunately, this is what happens with many high impact events. But you're right, with AI now, it's going to be even more difficult to discern some of its things.
Well, I always point out when I try to bring this thing up to people, I always point out that on January 6th, there was supposedly a clash between police and protesters on a corner in Washington, D.C. And the guy was in the hotel right above the corner. He looked out the window with his phone, and there was a reporter and her cameraman there and nobody else. But when he turned his camera to the TV, the reporter and the cameraman were showing a group of people clashing with the police. And and then he turns and he looks back out the window, and it's just a reporter and the cameraman. Somehow they were using a green screen somewhere that had actors portraying the police and the protesters, and they were mixing it with her live footage on TV.
Something similar happened with the moon launch recently. It was journalists and photographers were supposed to be taking pictures of the astronauts before they left. And they had a cameraman behind one of the journalists who was taking pictures. And in their phone screen, you could see what they were aiming their phone at. There was no one there. The astronauts were not there. So they were using some kind of special effects. Also, the green screen bleed-ins during the mission.
Well, and that's where we're at, you know. They have gotten to it used to be that they would have to film it, then they would have to edit it and turn it into an analog. Then they would have to put it back to digital, and then it would hide some of the effects. You could still see them. Today, they do it live. And that is what people are missing out. It's no longer just special effects and green screen in a movie where they have time to do the work. And truthfully, when they do it in a movie, the way that they film it, it comes out and it's already blended. So, you know, there's obviously the post editing, but we have known that they can do this stuff live for at least a decade. So it wouldn't be hard at all. You know, they could show a city that doesn't exist in the United States being blown up by an alien to the people in Portugal. And they could show us a city in Europe being blown up by aliens here in the United States, and it's all green screen. And nobody would know any different because we're not there.
And the sad truth about that is, this is what we deal with for almost every high impact event. We don't know if these things are truly unfolding or if there's a level of theater occurring with any of this stuff, which it's been proven that there has been time and time again. Trusting our government about UFOs.
The million in Ukraine, dude, the dead in Ukraine, the guy opening up his body bag so he can take a puff of his cigarette.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's just one example. The footage of someplace in Ukraine being blown up, and then it comes out and we can see the camera on the dolly and the fire pots and stuff as the people are walking through, right? I mean, right. So we've had this stuff. They're using it. Good example is the big explosion in Kentucky when the fireworks blew up there. They took that footage and they cut all the people out of it, and then they put it on the news and said it was an explosion that Assad had caused in Syria. And the only reason why I knew it wasn't real is because I saw the footage of the explosion in Kentucky. And I'm like, that's the same thing. And then it comes out a few days later, you know, they showed the two side by side. A friend of mine did it. And we showed that they had used fake footage to claim that Assad attacked his own people in Syria. You know, so we've been getting this stuff for years, man. And it's hard for people to understand just how, you know, what was that was it Mark Twain that said it? It's easy to fool people, but hard to get people to understand that they've been fooled. If you look at what they've done with the fuel and the fertilizer and the other things that come out of the Middle East by shutting it down the way they have, dude, I don't think we've got years. I think we've got months.
Well, we'd have to hope for alien-free energy to save us.
Do you mind me recommending a couple shows to people? Daniel Davis Deep Dive has had two very important guests on over the last couple of days. He did a Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. He's had Chris Martenson and he's had Mike Adams on. Those two shows, if you don't catch any other things from Daniel, you should, because they talk about the effects, the real effects of the fuel problems that we're having and what's going to happen. And then they talk about the famine. Now, you know, Mike Adams, he and I have had some issues over the years, but I really genuinely like the man and I trust him as far as information goes. You know, say what you like, say what you want, but he's proven to be a very honest man when he's presenting information. Business wise, me and him, that's where he and I have had a conflict. But anyway, it's still.
So you're saying this fuel crisis is going to continue to get worse, and then stem off into major problems, even like famine?
Well, there's a food fuel equation, and it's actually, I said it backwards. It's a fuel food equation. You have to have X amount of fuel in order to have X amount of food. And that fuel food equation includes fertilizer, because fertilizer is a knockoff product of the processing of fuel. So it's a twofold strike when things like this get closed up. Basically we got 25% of the natural gas locked up there. We got the oil, obviously. 35 to 40% of the fertilizer is locked up over there right now. And that's not including the fact that they blew up the nitrogen. You remember in Lebanon, they hit that port a couple of years ago, and it looked like an atomic bomb going off. That was fertilizer. So that's the second time that fertilizer has been hit in what, 4 years? Farmers in the United States are talking about letting somewhere between 30 and one of my friends said he's going to let 60% of his fields go this year because he can't afford to do it. Now you take that across the board, 30%. That's a 30% reduction in production. And that's not including the fact that plastics are being affected. Everything that we eat, everything that we get is packaged in plastic. And that has taken a dive. And that's a very important thing that people aren't mentioning is the raw materials for plastics come out of the Middle East predominantly. And if you can't make packaging, you can't ship things.
Benevolent aliens, come save us now.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so, right? I wish I had better news on that front, but folks, don't take my word for it. There's plenty of people out there talking about this stuff. You've got Steve Henke from Johns Hopkins that's talking about the economics. You've got Chris Martenson out there talking about the fuel. There's a lot of people out there other than just me that have this information and have done the research. But those two shows, they're on Daniel Davis Deep Dive. They're less than an hour long. It's Chris Martenson and Mike Adams. I think those are very important for people to hear if you haven't heard it yet, because I dang sure know you're not getting it off the shite stream media feeds.
Yes. Raven, this was great. Thank you so much. We are in wild times, man, so we'll definitely be doing this again.
Folks, if you have space to do it, grow a garden. I'm telling you, you still get time to get one in.
Yes, sir. Agreed 100%. Raven, thank you so much. This was awesome. Before I let you go, remind the audience the best way to get a hold of your content.
The best place to find me, I've got some live stuff that I put up on YouTube if you want to catch up on the Middle East. But the best place to get me is Spreaker for my podcast. But I'm on all kinds of podcast repeater sites. So, just Raven Keefer, No Apologies podcast. And if you like good music, I'm on all streaming platforms. I don't expect to make money off of it. I'm doing the music because I want to, y'all. So if you like classic or some hard rock or some just nice contemporary stuff, find me. It's Raven Keefer Music.
Right on, Raven. Thank you, brother. We'll do it again. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow.
Watch Doors of Perception, now on Amazon Prime. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history. Hello, friends. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey, knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Hello, friends. If you or a loved one has been struggling with a chronic or complex health problem and have been disappointed with the level of care available, get in touch with my friend Christian Yordanov by booking a free intro call. He is a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and author of 2 health books. He was on the show recently to discuss his latest book on longevity, How to Actually Live Longer, Volume 1. He has worked with clients with severe gastrointestinal problems, toxicity, and debilitating chronic fatigue. He's helped people with autoimmune conditions, hypothyroidism, skin disorders, autism, multiple sclerosis, obesity, and other metabolic conditions. And he can help you restore your health so you can get back to living your life to the fullest. He works with clients remotely all over the world and uses state-of-the-art functional lab testing to help uncover gut and hormonal imbalances, nutrient deficiencies, and other underlying factors contributing to health problems. Coupled with his thorough client intake and metabolic function assessment, he'll design truly customized protocols that will help you address the roots of your health challenges. If you're tired of suffering conflicting health advice and frustrating trial and error, and you're ready to transform your life, Christian will teach you how to restore and optimize your health by improving your gut function, detoxification system, nutrition, supplementation, sleep and light hygiene, and of course reducing psychological and physiological stress in your body. He'll give you all the tools and knowledge you need to create lasting health and vitality. Remember, symptoms, disease, and dysfunction do not occur randomly in the body. Every effect has a cause. Understanding the causes allows you to change the effects. This is the power of the functional health paradigm that Christian will help you implement. So if you've been suffering with gut problems like constipation, gas, bloating, pain, or you're battling burnout, chronic fatigue, you have mood issues, brain fog, low libido, poor sleep, or you're having trouble losing weight and taking control of your cravings, diet, and routines, there are solutions. Book your free intro call with Christian using the link in the description to discuss your situation and see how he can help you transform your health. Hello, friends. Have you tried what may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man, C60 PurplePower? My C60 story has led me to great health mentally and physically. It's helped me personally lose weight, have more energy, and fight aging in general. You can also get C60 for your pets. Our dogs love it. They may live forever. Go check out C60 for yourself. If you use the link right in the description, you're going to get 10% off your order plus free shipping. They have some incredible new products like gummies, oils, and much more. Now, enjoy this episode. Hello, friends. If you or a loved one is struggling with a digestive problem, if you often feel bloated or gassy, experience constipation,